Good evening, dear friends, and welcome. Tonight, we gather under the soft glow of woolen whispers, threads of tradition, family, and future gently woven together. I am honored to speak to you about a journey, mine and that of my sister, my companion in this path, my sister Sophia. From the earliest days, I have felt the weight and gift of service. I have accepted, with humility, the trust placed in me to serve our people, to uphold the dignity of our institution and the promise of our future. In those moments when I stand before you, I speak not only for myself, but for the generations who came before, and for those who will follow. I pledge to carry this duty with the greatest dignity and with the best example. When I look to my sister, to Sophia, I see both companionship and continuity. We stand together in a world that is changing, yet ever rooted in what sustains us. You have no idea that night when Lily finally slept. Our journey is not one of individuality alone, but of togetherness. In her I find courage, in me she finds companionship, and together we move forward for Spain, for its unity, for its future. This metaphor of wool reminds me, wool is soft, resilient, warm. It comes from many strands, spun together to form something stronger, more enduring. So too must our spirit be, tender in compassion, steadfast in purpose. We must wrap ourselves in the warmth of empathy, yet stand firm when the winds of challenge blow. We must listen, learn, and act. Let us remember that true leadership is not about loud proclamations, but about quiet constancy. It is not about being above the people, but being among them. It is about service rather than self-glory. It is about the future rather than just the present. And it is about taking the whispers of our history and weaving them into the bold tapestry of our tomorrow. As we walk this path together, you, me, my sister, and all who believe in this shared venture, let us carry hope in our hearts, respect in our deeds, and humility in our stance. Let us be warmed by the woolen threads of tradition, enriched by the light of new ideas, and united by the commitment to serve. From the moment I first understood the world beyond my own small hands, I learned that duty is not just an obligation, it is a way of life. It is a quiet voice that reminds you that you are part of something larger, something that breathes beyond your own heartbeat. And as I have grown, I have come to understand that true service is felt not in the applause of the moment, but in the silent work, the effort that never seeks to be seen yet always aims to make a difference. Service is not a title to be inherited, it is a path to be walked. It means showing up every day with the same sense of purpose, whether the world is watching or not. There is a weight in it, yes, but there is also a beauty, a chance to contribute, to give, and to be present for those who look to you with hope. Not because of who you are, but because of what you are willing to do. Each time I appear before you, I am aware that I stand in the footsteps of those who came before, those who taught dignity not by words alone, but by actions carried out with conviction. I think of the times I have watched others lead not through noise, but through quiet consistency. These are the moments that have shaped my understanding of leadership, not as command, but as a form of service. You do not lead by asking for attention. You lead by giving attention to the people, to the needs, to the unspoken cries beneath the surface of everyday life. This duty I carry is not mine alone. It is shared with each one of you who works in ways that may never be publicly acknowledged, the teacher who stays late to help a struggling student, the doctor who finds hope in the last moments of exhaustion, the farmer who labors at dawn so that others may eat. This is service too. And it is in this spirit that I find my own role, not to be set apart, but to be among, with, and for the people. There is a special kind of peace in knowing that your life stands for something greater than its own comfort. It brings with it a sense of grounding, a sense of direction that no storm can shake. When the world feels uncertain, it is the anchor of responsibility that keeps you steady, the knowledge that your purpose does not change simply because the winds do. Service becomes the compass, guiding each decision, reminding you of the greater good that lies beyond momentary desire. I have often thought about the nature of promise. A promise is more than a declaration. It is a living bond, a silent vow that breathes through every act that follows. The promise of service, when made with sincerity, is a pledge beyond words. It is a lifelong commitment to uphold the dignity of the role entrusted to you. To serve is to be faithful, even when the path is unclear. It is to be present, even when no one else notices. It is to continue, even when the road stretches long and lonely ahead. And yet, service is not without its rewards. For in giving, we receive more than we ever imagined. There is a quiet fulfillment in knowing that your life has touched another, even in the smallest way. There is a strength that grows each time we act not for ourselves, but for others. There is a joy in seeing others lifted, guided, supported, and knowing you had a part, however small, in that ascent. As time unfolds, I carry with me the lessons of those who have walked with grace before me, who spoke not only through speeches, but through lives of purpose. I want my actions to echo that same spirit, to remind young people especially that duty is not a burden, it is a blessing. It gives our lives meaning, structure, and connection to the long thread of history that we are all a part of. The world is full of voices urging us to seek attention, applause, recognition, but service asks something different. It calls us back to humility, to consistency, to an inward strength that does not need validation. It asks us to plant seeds we may never see bloom, to build bridges we may never cross, to believe in a future that is bigger than any single one of us. For me, duty is a gentle, constant reminder. I am here not to be above, but to stand with. I am here to learn, to listen, and to offer what I can, whether in the tradition of those before me, or in the new paths yet to be forged. I am here not to represent perfection, but to embody sincerity. I am here to serve, and in that service, I hope to give back to a nation that has given me everything, my roots, my history, my identity. To those who may doubt their own place in this world, who feel their efforts go unseen, remember this: true service is never lost. The smallest act done with love holds value beyond measure. And when we each take responsibility, not just for ourselves but for others, we weave a stronger fabric, one thread at a time, creating a future held together by respect, by unity, by shared purpose. So I stand here today not with answers, but with conviction, not with perfection, but with sincerity. I do not claim to have all the wisdom, but I promise to seek it. I do not claim to know every path ahead, but I promise to walk it with integrity. I accept this duty not as a weight, but as an honor, and I offer my service not as a performance, but as a quiet pledge to all those who place their trust in me. Let us walk forward together, each of us giving what we can where we are, with hearts open and hands willing. For in our shared duty we find not only responsibility but purpose, not only challenge but strength, and not only obligation, but the grace of a life lived in service. There is a quiet power in the bond between sisters, a power born not just from shared blood, but from shared moments, the unseen glances, the whispered secrets, the unspoken encouragements. Growing up side by side with someone who understands you without explanation is a gift, and that gift grows stronger with time, especially when the path you walk leads into history. For me, the presence of my sister has been a steady light, a reassuring constant in a world that often shifts beneath our feet. In moments of doubt, she has been the calm to my uncertainty, the laughter to my seriousness, the reminder that no matter how public or demanding life becomes, there is someone who sees you not as a symbol, but simply as yourself. That is the beauty of sisterhood. It carries you where titles cannot, grounding you in identity rather than expectation. In the course of our lives, we have stood not only as siblings, but as partners in a shared future. Through the lens of time, sisterhood becomes more than companionship, it becomes legacy. Legacy is not a grand gesture or a single moment that defines us. It is the unfolding of many small acts of support, care, and trust over years. It is the shared history that strengthens us, and the shared dreams that push us forward. We both carry a role that stretches beyond our own generation. We stand linked not only to each other, but to the women and sisters who came before us, those who lived through times of change, who faced hardship with resilience, who carried their duties with dignity and grace. We look to them not to imitate, but to be inspired, to be reminded that strength is inherited not only through name, but through example. My sister and I have learned early that legacy is not a story we write alone. It is a fabric woven from different threads, our family, our people, our values, and yes, our own bond. In her, I see the future not as a distant horizon, but as a promise already forming in shared laughter, in nights spent talking over quiet fears and big dreams, in silent support when words are not enough. There is peace in knowing that no matter what challenges we face them together. We learn from each other constantly. She reminds me to breathe, to find lightness where I see weight, to trust that even in the most solemn moments there is room for joy. She has taught me that leadership can be shared, that strength can be gentle, and that sometimes the truest form of guidance is simply being present. We have walked hallways steeped in tradition, aware of the eyes that once watched, of the voices that once echoed. And in those moments we feel not pressure, but gratitude, to be part of a story longer than our own. We do not see our legacy as something heavy or imposing, but as something living, something we shape every day through our thoughts, our choices, our solidarity. In her presence, I am reminded that heritage is not a burden, but a foundation. It allows us to stand taller, not because we are lifted above others, but because we are rooted in the belief that our purpose is greater than self. It is in the little things, the way we encourage one another before a speech, the way we silently understand the unspoken, the way we find comfort even in the expectations placed on us, that sisterhood becomes both solace and source. Some might think that our roles place us in competition, that there must be a struggle between the one who leads and the one who supports. But what they do not see is the quiet hand on your shoulder when the world seems too vast, the shared joke that breaks the silence, the way silence itself feels safe when shared with a sister. Legacy does not belong to one, it belongs to both, in different ways, through different strengths. And together those strengths form something lasting. We are not just daughters of a king and queen, we are daughters of a nation that looks to us not for perfection, but for humanity. And in that space we learn how deeply sisterhood matters. We are reminded that pain is halved when shared, that joy is doubled, that confidence grows when mirrored in another's eyes. I have always believed that the future is not something we inherit. It is something we craft, and in crafting it, character matters as much as tradition. My sister helps me to see what matters most: eyes free of judgment, words free of weight, a heart unburdened by fear. These are traits not taught in books or ceremonies, but in small moments of trust built over years. One day, history will be written about us, perhaps in textbooks, perhaps in memories carried by those who follow. I hope that when they do speak of us, they speak not only of the roles we held, but of the bond we shared, a bond that showed grace under expectation, loyalty under pressure, and compassion in duty. There will be times when the world is loud, when the noise of expectations and opinions threatens to drown out our own inner voices. But in those moments I know she is there, a reminder to breathe, to pause, to smile, and in her eyes I see not competition, but companionship, not a shadow, but a light. That is the heart of sisterhood. It endures, it strengthens, it uplifts. And through it, legacy becomes not a distant idea, but a living, breathing truth formed from connection, shared purpose, and quiet love. No matter where our paths lead, they will always run side by side, not because of obligation, but because of choice, because of trust, because of a bond that no title or distance can change. And that, perhaps, is the most beautiful legacy we will leave, not only that we inherited history, but that we walked through it together. There is a kind of strength that doesn't roar. It doesn't ask for applause, nor does it need the spotlight to prove its worth. This is the strength that grows in silence, nurtured by reflection, patience, and a quiet understanding of one's place in the world. It is a strength I have come to recognize not in grand gestures, but in steady steps, not in shouts of certainty, but in whispers of commitment. When I think of leadership, I do not imagine it as a crown worn high or a voice raised above others. Rather, I see it as a hand held out, a presence felt even when unspoken. It is in the small acts of care, the thoughtful listening, the careful attention, the willingness to serve long before being seen. It is built not on who one appears to be, but who one is willing to become. True leadership is quiet, not because it lacks power, but because it understands the weight of power, and it chooses to carry that weight with humility. I have learned that listening is one of the greatest acts of leadership. Listening not just to words, but to emotions, to uncertainty, to the needs that lie beneath the surface. To listen is to respect, and respect in turn is the foundation upon which influence is built. When you lead from a place of listening, you do not impose, you invite. You do not command, you inspire. This kind of leadership starts not in public, but in private, in the choices you make when no one is watching, in the principles you follow even when they go unseen. It is easy to act for the sake of the stage, but the truest character is formed in the unseen space. I aspire not only to make speeches that echo, but to take actions that endure. Leadership is not about the moment that draws attention. It is about the legacy that quietly shapes lives long after words fade. There is a beauty in humility, in knowing that our contribution, however small it may feel, is part of a larger story. Humility teaches us that we do not need to be the loudest to be heard, nor the highest to lift others. It is a grace that reminds us of our shared humanity, of the fact that every voice has value and every person has a place. It is a lesson I carry with me in every meeting, every gathering, every step toward responsibility. I believe that being a leader does not mean being above others, but being among them, not in distance, but in connection. It is in the moments when you look someone in the eyes and truly see them, when you walk beside them instead of ahead. That is where trust is built, that is where hearts are moved. Leaders are not remembered merely for their speeches or their decisions, but for the way they made others feel seen, heard, and valued. There are times when silence is more powerful than speeches. Silence gives room for reflection, for honesty, for growth. It allows us to hear what is often drowned out by noise, the quiet heartbeat of our people, their fears, their hopes, their struggles. A leader must make space for those voices, must learn to pause before acting, to understand before responding. That stillness is not weakness, it is wisdom. With every responsibility comes the temptation to seek praise, to be affirmed in outward ways. But true leadership asks us to find strength in service, to find worth in work done well, not in applause received. I am reminded again and again that the deepest impact is not always seen on a stage or captured in a photograph. It is felt in the silent corners of lives uplifted, spirits steadied, dignity restored. In moments of challenge, quiet strength becomes our anchor. It may not draw attention, but it steadies us when everything around feels uncertain. Quiet strength is resilient. It bends but does not break. It heals but does not harden. It carries within it not the hardness of force, but the softness of courage, and that courage often begins from the simplest act, showing up even when the way is unclear. And so, as I walk into a future filled with responsibility, I do so not with the intention of being the loudest voice or the most visible figure, but with the hope of being a steady presence, a reminder that leadership can be tender, that power can be gentle, and that service is its own kind of sovereignty. I want to carry myself with the integrity that comes from knowing that every title and honor is not a prize, but a trust. I am learning that leadership grows from listening, from humility, from the strength to do what is right even when unnoticed. I learn from those who came before me, who led without taking, who served without asking, who stood firm without force. I hope to mirror their grace, to live in a way that gives more than it receives, and to lead in a way that lifts more than it commands. Quiet strength does not mean silence, it means intention. It does not deny emotion, it directs it. And humble leadership does not diminish one's power, it channels it for others, not for oneself. In a world full of noise, it is the quiet leaders who will endure, who will continue to stitch together the fabric of community, unity, and dignity. So I hold on to that thought, that every time I listen instead of speak, every time I consider instead of react, every time I serve instead of seek, I am not losing ground, I am gaining purpose. And perhaps that is the truest form of influence, the ability to lead not by demand, but by example, to guide not by force, but by presence, to change not in a moment, but through a lifetime. That is the kind of leadership I choose. One that does not shout, but steadies, one that does not boast, but builds. And in every quiet act, every humble decision, I hope to embody the strength of service, a strength that belongs not to me alone, but to all who believe that the greatest impact often comes from the quietest hearts.